Welcome to the Simply Authentic podcast, where we hope to inspire you to dream bigger, empower you to take charge of your own life, and challenge you to be your most authentic self.
Welcome back to the Simply Authentic podcast. I'm Tanya Murfin.
And I'm Angie Mullings. And today we are talking about change.
Yes.
Yeah. Change is, we've decided it's a very broad topic.
It is.
Right? We're going to sort of narrow down and give some thoughts on change, different types of change, how change affects us and the people around us.
Yeah.
And we thought about doing change because of where we are at in the year.
Yes.
We just
Fall.
turned the calendar. It's
We
fall,
did, yes.
and that means a reset for a lot of reasons,
It
right?
does, yes.
The chill in the air, just the temperature, the color of the leaves, and the falling leaves, and school's back in session, and everybody's gotten back into this the groove, the routine, if you will, after summer.
Yeah.
And it has been proven that fall is the most productive season.
I've never heard that, and so that's an interesting statistic for me.
Yeah. And I'll give you just a couple because
Okay.
it was an
Yeah.
interesting read. I read a Forbes article, and it said, it talked about what days were most productive. The most productive days of the year are Mondays in October.
Really?
Specifically, 11 o'clock on Mondays.
Wow.
Yeah, it got that specific.
So,
yeah.
listeners, get ready to be really productive.
That's
'cause
right.
October's here.
That's right.
Yes.
And we set all these goals in January. And by the way, winter is the least productive season.
Yeah, I would
and
believe
that's when
that.
we're setting these goals for the following year. And we're not really, yes, we're motivated when the calendar officially changes, but then that starts to wane, and you never know. We might get a big snowstorm, or we might have ice, and it deters us from really attacking those goals sometimes. But if you refocus in the fall when we're the most productive, then you can accomplish the majority of your goals in this time frame from now until the end of the year.
Right, the fourth quarter.
The highest percentage of tasks are completed in October. The lowest percentage of tasks are completed in January.
Okay.
And then again, fall ranks as the most productive season, and winter is far less productive. So I thought that was interesting as we start to talk about a fall reset and thinking about the goals that we wanted to accomplish. And sometimes things get in the way. Change happens throughout the year, and things get in the way of us being our most productive.
Yeah.
But we hope that you'll refocus and listen to this about change, and maybe that's a different way for you to approach making your goals by the end of the year.
Yeah. And I think if nothing else, it gives us an opportunity to get that list back out or to relook at the list that's always in front of us and say,
Yes.
okay, I'm in the fourth quarter. Where am I at? What did I do? What have I done with my money? What have I done with my time? Did I get to travel? Did I accomplish these 4 goals that I have written on my list?
Right.
I think for me, Angie, fall just feels good. The approach of fall and getting rid of the summer heat and a little cooler weather. We get to change wardrobes, which is exciting
Always fun.
for us
Yeah.
women.
Yeah.
Maybe men too.
Yeah.
And it just feels good, right?
Yeah.
And so I can see why you're maybe invigorated in the fall season.
Right. Crisp mornings, and you're inside more, right? You take the summer and we're all on vacation, and it's kind of the time when you want to take for family and relax a little bit. That's kind of the vibe around summer. And if it's nice outside, we want to be outside,
We do.
right?
Yes,
And
always.
when it's fall and the mornings are crisp and a little cool, we're more inclined to stay in. And I think that's perhaps why it's a little more productive, because we're more apt to stay in and, just be more productive.
Yeah.
When we talk about change, I wanted to mention that change is both a verb and a noun.
Okay.
So, as a verb, we replace something with something else, especially something of the same kind that is newer or better.
Okay.
I highlighted that because change gives us an opportunity to become better, whether it's a change we saw coming and we
True.
wanted to happen.
Yeah.
Sometimes those unexpected changes could lead to something that is newer and better. And we're going to talk about that more in
Yes.
depth. But I like that part of that description.
Agree.
As a noun, it's the act or instance of making or becoming different.
Okay.
And I think we all want to be different in a better way,
Yeah.
right? If we can change, if change makes us better in the long run, even if we don't see it right in front of us when the change is immediate, but we can look back and say, that made me a better person, or
Yeah.
I'm better because of that.
Yeah, so something that comes to my mind, Angie, and something that I have experience with, unfortunately, is divorce. So I think when you realize that you're going to get divorced, whatever, everybody's situation is different, but whatever your situation was or is, for me, it was sudden. It was, yes, there was turmoil leading up to it, but the day that I knew we were going to get divorced and he walked out the door, I never saw him again. He took all of his stuff and he left. And it's devastating. And divorce has been explained like it's a death. And I absolutely agree with that, because it's the death of something you loved, maybe someone you loved, a relationship you loved, a family you might have loved. It's the death of so many things that, and there's so many legs to people and marriages and relationships in general, that when one ends, the word change seems quite simple for
Yeah.
it, you know?
Yeah.
So when I was thinking about all the things that changed immediately and then over time, well, friendships is one of them. You lose friends.
Yeah.
Let's face it, you lose family members.
Right,
You know,
right.
people are suddenly gone out
Yeah.
of your life.
Yeah.
So it's not only the death of a spouse, it's the death of relationships around you. Finances are different.
Yes.
So you go from maybe 2 pools of money to 1 pool of money. So finances are completely different. And in my case, I was left with a big ball of shit and financial trouble that I had no idea existed. So talk about devastating.
Yes, yes.
Also, now you have an empty house,
Yeah.
right? If you've
Yeah.
had a partner there
Yeah.
for X amount of time, it could be years, months, whatever, and then suddenly that person is gone. It's quiet, you
Yeah.
know, and at the
Yeah.
time, my kids were still home. Both of them were still there. And so I still had my children there, but the void and the vacancy is, it is present in every room you walk through.
Right.
For one reason or
Yeah.
another. And then, which makes all of your habits different. So
Yeah.
if your normal routine is coming home and sharing a glass of wine, making dinner together, and either sitting outside or watching TV, watching a show, that's different.
Yeah.
You know, it's different
Yeah.
to do it solo than to do it with somebody.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
for me, that is one of the biggest changes that I have experienced in my life, and it wasn't fun.
Yeah.
I didn't
Yeah.
enjoy it.
Well.
However, I will say, on the other side of that, that was a marriage that had to end, needed to end. Absolutely, I am blessed that it ended, because I could have ended up in a much worse situation than I was in. And when people are dishonest about everything, it really leaves you wondering, who in the heck was that person?
Yeah. Yeah.
And who was I
Yeah.
to fall for all of it?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I feel like I changed drastically.
I'm sure you did.
Afterwards.
Yeah.
And not immediately.
Right.
Over time.
Well, there was probably a change in you throughout the marriage, you know, and, you know, I've had multiple conversations. I've never been married, so I've never experienced divorce, but I've had
Right.
multiple conversations with friends about divorce. And first of all, people change over time. Sometimes that makes your relationship stronger.
Yes.
Sometimes people grow apart.
Yes.
So that's a piece of what we're talking about in terms of change.
Yes.
So once you've established that this organism is no longer working, sometimes fear, and I've heard, we got to stay together for the kids, or we got to, you know, we got to do this, or we got to
Oh,
do
yeah.
that. And those people are, when when you are thinking about doing something like that, making that sort of shift or change, I have to imagine if you are a caring, thoughtful person, you are thinking about the ripple effect. You are thinking about
Absolutely.
who is going to be affected if I do this. Yes, I know that I'll be happier.
Yes.
I know that life will be better for me, but what about my kids, my, my income, my, all those things that you mentioned?
Yeah.
Because all of that is going to shift and change. So fear, I think, keeps people in place
Yes.
much
Oh,
longer than what
absolutely.
they probably should.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, and I will say this, almost 100% of the time, everyone who's talked to me about divorce says, I was so much better after the fact.
Yeah.
Looking back,
Agree. I would
it
agree.
was something that died. We both changed. It needed to end, and whether it was forced upon you, like you're a person walking out, or you were the person who decided to make that change.
Right.
Either way, it had a ripple effect. It affected your whole entire family, your whole entire life, and you have to weigh those consequences. But looking back,
Absolutely.
most people say that if it was so bad that you were so unhappy and so miserable, it needed to happen. Sometimes you need a push to get past the fear,
Yeah.
and sometimes that push is the other person making that decision.
Yeah. And in my case, it was just sudden, okay, we've found some things out and this is over,
Yeah.
period. So over in a day is, it was just a different scenario.
Oh, I can't imagine.
Altogether.
I
Yeah.
can't imagine the shock of knowing that you didn't see this coming, you didn't know it was coming, and then all of a sudden, boom, we have a fight. You're out. We're done.
Yep.
That's a big 180.
Big change, yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned something about changing jobs, and that would be another huge change and a pivot for somebody that even if it was in the same industry, but you've worked at this job for 10, 15 years, and you know all of the people that work around you, you may like or dislike them. It's still a work family. I don't care where you work or
Right.
how much you don't like the people around
Right.
you. They're still your work family that you have to work around every day.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So getting ready to change a job with a different workplace, different boss, different coworkers, huge ripple
change.
effect there.
Yes.
And then what if you're going into a different line of work? So many people come into our line of work
Right.
having been a teacher or having done something else in their life, and now they've decided to become a real estate agent. Completely different career, completely
Right.
different money source.
Right.
You're dependent on
Yourself.
yourself. Yes, we
yeah.
don't get perks. We don't get 401ks.
Yeah.
We don't get retirements.
Right.
You are your own boss, which is a huge blessing. But you also are responsible to paying all of your bills and all your checks coming in.
Yeah.
So it's an art form,
It is. It
for
is.
what we do for a living, and I'm sure there's thousands of examples we could give for
Yeah.
change in jobs.
Right. And, Tanya, you probably have interviewed people like this as well. When you go from a fully salaried position like that, and you're thinking about, you're not happy where you're at, but you're thinking about stepping into the world of real estate or insurance or any of those commission-based businesses, there's a huge fear factor there. And I've interviewed countless people who said to me, I know I need to make a change. And everybody has always said, I'd be good at selling something,
Yeah.
real estate, and I'm really interested in real estate. Or I think I'd be really good at selling insurance or whatever the case may be. But fear stops them and they don't make that change. I've seen that happen time and time again where I see potential in them and I think, oh my goodness, you could be so good in this job. And at the end of the day, many of them don't take that leap because they can't fathom what that change would mean for them.
Right.
And when you're in a salaried position, you are not self-dependent. You have to do your job,
Right.
obviously, to get
Show up,
paid.
yeah, to get paid.
But on this end of things, it's all incumbent on you being productive and you doing the things you need to do. And if you don't, then you don't make an income. So that kind of change is drastic, I agree. And it's unfortunate that some people let fear stand in their way, because I think, again, it's another one of those things, when you see it on the other side, when you take that leap and you feel good about it, then it pays such dividends.
Oh, for sure. Another example I can think of with change, and you and I listened to a Mel Robbins podcast recently on change, and she mentioned being an empty nester. And Mel's very funny. If you listen to her podcast, you know that, but she kind of made fun of the name empty nester. Like, who decided that when your children grow up and graduate and leave your home, that you, the parents, are left with the name empty nester?
Yeah.
It's kind of an ugly name. It's not glamorous whatsoever.
Has kind of a negative connotation.
It has, exactly.
Yeah.
It has a negative
Yeah.
connotation. And us poor parents also are left without our little birds in the nest. And so we are left to wonder, well, what happens now? And kind of like I explained, the empty house and the quiet house, it's much like that as well. You help them pack up their room, you move them to wherever they're going, whether it be college, a first apartment, they could be going across country, who the heck knows.
Yeah.
I am grateful that I didn't have to do that with my kids, so I don't have that perspective to give.
Yeah.
But it's quiet and
Yeah.
it's lonely.
Yeah.
And I have so many friends and parents that have went through this either recently, they're currently going through it. I have some clients I need to touch base with because their daughter's been gone maybe a month now. And when I asked what they were going to do with their spare time, they said lay in her bed and cry. So we all have the same fear of what's it really going to be like. And from a personal perspective, when Lakin left, yes, I was sad. And every time I
Yeah.
walked by her room, I was sad.
Yeah.
And I cried for a while, maybe a couple of weeks, but Madden was still there. And so Madden and I became fast friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
With it just being her and I, and she missed her sister too. So
Yeah.
we ate together and we walked together and we watched TV together. So it can also help
Strengthen
energize and strengthen the
other
other
relationships.
relationship.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's the same for spouses when the kids leave the nest and there's two spouses left there looking at each other like, who are you and what are we going
Right.
to do now?
Right.
I've often heard that it's a time to become friends again and to figure out, well, what are we going to do? Because we've been
right.
going to these sports games for the
Yes.
last 10 or 12 years.
Yeah.
And now what are we going to do with our time?
Right,
So
exactly.
it's a fresh start.
Yeah. You know, I remember the day I left for college, and I'm the oldest. So the day I left for college, my dad helped me pack up my car, and I've seen the man cry like maybe 3 or 4 times in my lifetime. And he just said to me, "Don't you forget your way home." And, but then my mom, and he
Sweet.
never said anything else. You know, I knew he was, happy. They had raised me
course.
to go out and be productive and go to school and do all
Yeah.
the things. So he was happy. But on the other side, my mom said, it changed the whole family dynamic.
Of course.
It's not just when all the kids leave home that it changes the dynamic or it's the empty nest syndrome.
Right.
But when the oldest is the first one takes the first leap,
Yep.
and that changes all the dynamics
Sure.
in the rest of the family,
It
like
does.
your relationship with Madden.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that people don't often think about, that,
Yeah.
again, that ripple effect of just one leaving the nest can have a major impact.
Oh, yeah. And I think as parents, we're often so worried about the one leaving the nest that we're not as focused on the ones that are still
Makes
there.
sense.
So
Yeah.
your parents probably quickly realized, well, shoot fire, we got 3 more kids to
Yeah,
raise.
exactly.
And
Yeah.
and then the 3 kids that are left, they make up the family dynamic now that you're gone.
Right.
And yes, Angie's missing, but I'm sure there was plenty to fill in.
Yeah.
And one by
Yeah.
one, then you just figure that out probably as
Yeah.
parents.
Yeah.
I was also thinking about the change with grandparenting. And of course, when I found out I was going to be a grandparent, you really don't know what that looks like, you know? So it's kind of just
First of all, you're way too young.
Well, exactly. Duh.
I know that's the first thing you thought.
I had somebody walk by my house last week, friends of mine that I've known a long time, but I don't see them very often. You know, we just live in the same neighborhood.
Yeah.
And I had both girls. I'd went and got dinner for us, and Blake said, "Can we have a picnic?" So we were sitting out on the front porch, and I'd gotten Ryland's high chair out. So she's sitting in her high chair on the front porch, and Blake and I are sitting at the table eating our dinner, and he walks by and he's like, "Hey, Tanya, are you a grandma?" And I'm like, "Yes," and there's 2 of them. And he was like, "You're too young to be a grandma." I'm like, "I know." Anyway, the big change that forced upon my life, and anybody that's grandparent is going to say, best change that ever happened to your life.
Right.
But in the beginning, I was thinking, I knew I was going to babysit one day a week. And, you know, I've been able to work 5 days a week, or in our job, maybe 7 days a week sometimes. But through the week, Monday through Friday, with whatever schedule I wanted to for so long, now I'm going to have to accommodate babysitting one day a week. And I was really kind of scared of how that might interrupt my workflow and my week.
Right.
And now fast forward, there's 2 of them, and Blake's 3.5. So, you know, for 3 years now, at least, I've been figuring this out. Now, that day of the week that I keep them, there's nothing that overlaps it unless it is something that I absolutely can't avoid.
Right.
So if it's closing, of course.
Right.
Sometimes we have meetings at the board that overlap and they're scheduled way out, and I just get a babysitter for that hour to go to that meeting. But now that day of the week is most important for me to make sure I have time for them, and that I'm not on my phone, and that I'm not distracted all day long. And so it's funny how we are so scared of change, but often in the end, we're better for it.
Right.
Where, you know, there's so much love in my house now with those 2 babies being there that, you know, I can't imagine it ever going back to anything different. So I think we often hear the word change, and there's a negative connotation that comes with it, or comes to mind.
Yes. And you know, Tanya, we in our industry, we've gone through a ton of change this year, and we have witnessed people in our industry either be, it's going to be fine, or be scared to death.
Yes.
And I think our attitude towards change really is dependent on us having all the information. I would say that the people who weathered the storm the best were the people who sought out information. How am I going to adjust this in my own business? How am I going to adjust this with my conversations with my clients? It's a constant, when you see change coming, when you know it's coming, to me, that's much better and much different than having it slap you in the face.
Absolutely.
So you have time to adjust, and you have time to figure it out. And again, those who really sought out information and knowledge and educated themselves, I think weathered it much better than others. And then there was that fear factor, but I think that fear came from the unknown. They weren't as well educated, didn't get as much information as they should have, and then boom, the change is here, and now they're trying to keep up.
Agree. And I think you and I see that even now into October, we're still seeing Facebook posts and people that we know just are not educated. They didn't, and just so the listeners understand, we have all kinds of information at our fingertips. With our national association, with our state association, and local. And as brokers, we're the one who's supposed to get the information to tell our agents to be prepared. So you and I have been training on this for months and months and months this year, because we knew it was coming. So we started talking about it and educating and watching for, new material basically that we could put out, and and then when the change happened, we were ready, and we were, all of our agents were educated, and are there questions? Of course, but you and I are still seeing even brokers who are asking questions. So if you're not going to be responsible enough to get the information so that you know how to do your business appropriately, and that can be for any field at all, right? Not
Right.
just real estate.
Right.
Then you are behind, and
Yeah.
and the change will be much harder on you if you're
Right.
not prepared.
Right. And if the leader is not prepared and not getting educated, then anyone following them are going
That's
to be
right.
apprehensive as well. So as a leader, when you see change coming, and it's a leader's job to have vision, right?
Yep.
Not just to, yes, we are informed about change sometimes. Sometimes that just happens, but also you have to look at the big picture and have vision to understand what might be shifting in your marketplace or your industry that you need to be prepared for change. And as a leader, it's really important to prep your people for that
It is.
as those changes happen. And if you're a true visionary and you are a really good leader, you're going to have preparation for them so that they can adjust quickly, because we all know that we lead people that view change differently, that some are very accepting of change. They relish change. They want diversity in the workplace. They want to constantly evolve and change, while others have a hard time keeping up.
Oh, yeah.
So
There's a good
it's important for
bag of
you
each.
as the leader. I think it's important for us to mention that a good leader will be prepared, be educated, gain all the knowledge they can, and have the vision to see potential changes coming and get everybody prepared. Because if you have knowledge is power.
Yes,
So if you
absolutely.
have knowledge and you understand the changes that are happening, you can weather that storm much easier than if you don't.
Absolutely. And talking about our industry and change, our jobs are based around change for our clients, right?
Yes.
So I hadn't really thought of it like that, although we know that. We're always looking for change. When we're making our hot and warm list, we're listening for change. We're watching on Facebook for change.
Right.
And we're waiting for the more babies to come so they grow out of their houses. We're waiting for the kids to graduate because oftentimes parents will sell the family home, or they might even move to another state because the children are now in college or have went off into the workforce and are working somewhere else. So downsizing is a big part of the people that we work with. We also listen for death and for divorce because those changes impact housing
Right.
choices.
Right.
And people have to sell sometimes after a divorce. And if a parent or an aunt or uncle die and you're the one that's left as the trustee or one of the beneficiaries, and you're the one that has to get the house ready to sell, our jobs every week are based on change. And it's not all depressing changes.
We see people on their best days and their worst days.
We do. We
Yeah.
do. We see all of it. And we have to have the ability to work through that change, whatever it is, with that client. So if you're working with 10 clients, you could have 2 downsizers, you could have 2 people who have grown out of their homes and need a bigger one. You could have a death, you could have a divorce, you could have all kinds of different changes you're working with your
Right.
clientele in any given month, right?
Right. Absolutely.
So we are masters at having to go
Adapt.
through the changes with our clients and adapt with them, and sometimes be a resource,
Right.
and find out answers for them of what do I do next. I mean, we get calls all the time. I'm facing foreclosure because I can't afford it any longer.
Right.
What do I do? We can
Yeah.
help you.
Right.
We have resources. We know what to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you and I are constantly walking through change with our
Absolutely.
clients.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like I said, on the good days and the bad days, the worst case scenarios are those divorce situations where you have to manage and help them navigate change and lifestyle and who's buying what and who's selling what. And then on those great days when, a baby's coming into the picture and they have to, get a bigger home or
Need another
whatever.
bedroom.
So we're fortunate in that way that we
Yeah,
get to
we are.
experience a lot of different things with regard to change. Tanya, I want to talk a little bit about change that affects what our goals start out at the beginning of the year. You and I are big goal setters. We like to encourage our listeners to set those goals as well. But sometimes things happen throughout the year that makes you have to shift the goals that you had originally.
They do, yeah.
And I think a lot of people, if that happens, they get discouraged by it. And I want to encourage them to not feel that way because, change is inevitable. Things are going to happen. I have an agent in my office. I don't think she would care if I shared this story, but unfortunately, her whole year has been a series of starts and stops because she was supposed to have surgery.
Okay.
She was scheduled to have surgery in April. So if you're in our business, you have to prepare for that. You have to, if you've got clients, you kind of have to, it's almost like you're slowing down your business on purpose because you know you're going to be out of the picture.
That's right.
Yes, you can have somebody help you with clients who are still active, but you're not really you don't go out and seek new clients when you expect that you're going to be out for 6 to 8 weeks.
Sure.
So
Exactly.
you want, because we're very customer service centric and we want to make sure that our customers get the best experience. And if I'm going to be down for 6 to 8 weeks, that really will affect their experience.
Of course.
So we want to make sure that we're being honest with our clients and making sure that they understand what's ahead. So she slowed down her business. She's supposed to have surgery in April. It didn't happen because she had a sneeze. And then she was scheduled in June. Didn't happen because she had a cough.
Oh, gosh.
Then she was scheduled just a couple of weeks ago. And now she's scheduled in December. So this thing has gone on from April to December.
Gosh.
And bless her heart,
Yeah.
she's had to adjust every time. And just as she gets ramped back up again, or slows down again because she's getting ready to go to surgery, then she has a cough and they won't do the surgery.
Yep.
So that's a constant change that it takes a lot to help navigate through that.
does.
And it's just, some people would be that would be traumatizing for some people
Oh, my
because
gosh,
they
yeah.
couldn't adjust, well enough to that. She's very laid back and she takes it in stride, but it's still, it has certainly hurt her business this year. And it's unfortunate, but those are the kinds of things. She had big goals for this year. I'm going to get the surgery out of the way early in the year, and then I can come back strong and I'll finish strong the latter part of the year. So again, a change that was forced upon her, not one that she chose. And I think we have to rethink those goals then.
I agree.
As something major like that happens.
I agree. Yeah, and sometimes we don't know, like emergent surgery. Then you're in another boat,
Right.
that you didn't plan on, and you've got to figure out your clientele and your showings and all of that. And thank goodness you and I both run offices where we have people that can pick up and take off, and we don't have to worry about
Right,
it,
right.
And you and I are very conscientious and customer focused, and we've built a business on that, and we want to take care of our people ourselves. But when you cannot do that, then you do have to look to your neighbor realtor and say, okay, I've got some business I need to hand over to somebody because I'm
Right.
down and out for
Right.
I don't know how long,
Right.
One of the things that we were going to talk about was adjusting our approach to make changes.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point to make. A lot of people, how many people, Tanya, do you know at the beginning of the year said, I'm going to lose 20 pounds in 2 months? Or now we're hearing, I'm going to lose 40 pounds before the Christmas party because I want to fit in that dress. So
Good
I
luck.
think we have to, and then what happens when you don't reach those goals?
Well,
I think we've got to change our approach to goal setting and make them who says you have to lose 40 pounds by the Christmas party?
Exactly.
That's a goal
That's a lofty
dreamed
goal.
up. It's a lofty goal.
Yes.
What if we changed our approach and made it more positive?
Yeah.
Rather than saying, I'm going to lose 40 pounds before the Christmas party. What if you said, I am going to take a look at my health. I want to be healthier. And I'm going to look at my calorie intake, and I am going to lose a pound a week. I mean, that's an
That's my
attainable
goal.
goal
Right.
for everyone. It doesn't put an end date on it so that if
Right.
something happens and you have to have emergency surgery,
Right.
or that might actually help you lose weight. I
Right,
don't know.
that's true.
Yeah.
I mean, in some cases it could.
Yeah, yeah. So, but if something happens to throw you off of that goal and you have to adjust or change, it's not as devastating. And I think why people give up on their goals is that when something does interfere or they're not achieving those big goals, they do get discouraged and they don't know how to adjust.
Agree. And I think a good way of looking at it is to not look at it as you're stopping something. So I need
Right.
to cut out sugar and potato chips.
Right.
I can't stop eating M&Ms and I can't stop eating potato chips. And I am not speaking about myself, Angie. Okay? That is
Okay.
just an example.
It's just an example, pulled out of thin air.
Exactly. But if I can't, instead of framing my mind around stopping something, why don't we frame our mindset around beginning something?
Yes.
So maybe I'm beginning to eat a little less every day so that I save calories.
Right.
Maybe I'm beginning to walk every day and I'm adding a gift of being outside and getting my endorphins going and the more energy you have, the more calories you're going to burn throughout the day, right?
Right.
So I think if we reframe our mind sometimes and mindset, it's all about the mindset,
It is.
right?
Yes.
Then we can maybe get to where we're going with a better mindset versus, well, I've got to stop eating the M&Ms and the chips. I also want to point out that if you have a glass of water sitting here on the table, and if it were half full of water, okay, when you look at it, do you think it's half full or if it's half empty? So which is your mindset? Is it half full or is it half empty? And I think that when we go through change, and especially if it's something terrible, we often dig ourselves in a hole, and sometimes we end up there because that's just life, and
Yeah.
that is where this situation has put us.
Right.
And for us to be looking at that glass every day, and it would actually be a really good test of somebody that's going through something, or for you and I. If you put that glass of water on your kitchen, in your kitchen window or wherever you go every day, and you look at it and you get a choice, am I going to look at today as being half full or half empty? And some days when you're going through a crisis and there's a big change, it's going to be half empty, right?
Yeah.
That's life.
Yeah.
That's how we're built.
Right.
And sometimes we just want to cry and get under the covers and not go out in public.
Right.
But you got to get up.
Yeah.
Eventually.
You
We've
gotta
all
move
had to
forward.
get up and
That's
move
right.
forward. And so we hope that we are encouraging our listeners to look at that change in their lives and get that cup of water and set it on the windowsill or wherever you need to see it every day and think about, is it half full or is it half empty? And how will I set my mindset today?
And move forward.
That's right.
And we hope that most of your days are glass half full
Exactly.
days.
Exactly.
So as we wrap up, we just want to encourage you that if you found something valuable in this, that you will share it with your friends. We also want you to like us and follow us. I mean, we're likable. People need to like
We are
us, right?
super likable,
Yeah.
aren't we, Kate?
Yeah, we're likable. Likable. So like us and follow us on social media.
Yes, please do. Share it with a friend. And we want to thank Gershman Mortgage for recording us today, Jordan and Kate. And we will see you guys next time.
See ya. Thanks for listening to the Simply Authentic podcast. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram.
Be sure to listen to us on your favorite podcasting app.